what an incredible cast you had taking on these roles, I guess, right at the center, taking on Kat Rosalind. I mean, she plays it brilliantly. How much say do you have, I guess, in the casting process? And I guess when you're writing, you must have a strong vision of what maybe these people look like. So, how did you decide on her, and why was she the right person to play Kat?
Rosalind's just such a brilliant actress. I'd seen her in Slow Horses, which is done. Mick Herron, who's the author of those, is a friend of mine, and I'd seen those shows. But, we cast as a team here, myself, Nicholas Schindler, and Richard Fee in this case, and Victoria, who wrote these episodes as well. And she was just so great. And we all loved her. And as soon as we saw that she could possibly do and was available, we jumped on it. But we discussed all these sort of things. I also thought that for her, it's a very different role than what she does in Slow Horses. Slow Horses, she's much more calmer, withdrawn. This is a much more emotional role. She's sort of and gets to play the full-on lead. I think people are going to really love her in this. We've been very lucky. I shouldn't say lucky. We've been skilled, I guess, in our casting here. Michelle Keegan in our last show, and Fool Me Once. And most of these people are not that well known in America anyway, or the rest of the world. They're well known here in England, maybe. And I'm looking forward to Rosalind kind of blowing up Netflix the same way that Michelle did last year. And we had Cush Jumbo, and we've had some really wonderful, talented actors and actresses that have played the roles. We've been really lucky.
And that character, I suppose, having to play those different layers, because on the face of it, she is quite tough, and she is this detective, and she's got a lot of confidence and a lot of bravado. But then, of course, even what I've seen from the first episode, that all starts to unravel a bit. This is kind of her Achilles heel. These things that have happened with her ex and with her father. So I guess it takes a certain actor to be able to take that on, to be able to play both those sides.
Right, and she's just great at it. And there's also there's the this one's a little bit more in a sense procedurally, because she's actually a police officer. Usually the people are amateurs just living in the big houses behind the gated communities. So she's actually a police officer in this. And we also get a bit of her family dynamic, especially her mom and her aunties, that you saw got a little taste of in the first episode. So all these worlds combining, trying to figure out how did her life blow up? What happened? Who really killed her father? All these mysteries are coming back from the past while dealing with a really gruesome current mystery. So all that combining, it's really going to put her under the stress test for the 5 episodes.
And Ashley Walters, I mean, I was absolutely obsessed with Top Boy, and he just really blew it out the water with that one. Was that the thing that you'd seen in him before? And
I had, and we met on a Zoom like this and discussed the character. When I do that, whenever you sort of meet with the actors, and a lot of times we meet with them before, I can almost see their head starting, and they start talking a little bit like the characters and the actors. And I think Ashley really got into this kind of role, which is also really, really different for him, being he's the missing Josh. It was really fun to work with him. Getting to work with a little bit with Jimmy Nesbitt again, who was one of my favorites, and was in Stay Close. Mark Warren has a small part. He was in Safe that I did before. Sir Lenny Henry, getting him involved was just wonderful. And I think, Jesse and Mary Malone, two young actors who I think have huge futures in front of them. So that's part of the fun, is both discovering new talent, or people who maybe aren't quite as well known, with some of the more veteran talent, and it's a really interesting combination. Richard Armitage is my 4th show with Richard. I mentioned him. He gets, it's like he calls himself my lucky underpants or whatever else. I don't know if that's the terminology I would use, but of course Richard Armitage is back for the 4th time. And it's been really fun finding new roles for Richard to play that won't necessarily remind you. And Steve Pemberton also, who plays a truly chilling, both a dog breeder and villain. So I think he pops up in the beginning of episode 2, but Steve is just brilliant in this role. Brilliant, very chilling.
And ultimately, what do you hope people will take away from watching the show?
Yeah, I want you to enjoy yourself. I don't necessarily, I hope to stir your heart. I hope you shed a little bit of a tear at the end. I think you will. I think you'll be genuinely moved and surprised. But there's nothing wrong with just being entertained. I was actually posting, we had our election going on right now in America, and I'm like, here's the shows. Stop doom scrolling. Stop listening to pundits and polls. Get out and vote, and then just relax. And we don't know as we tape this, we don't know what happens. But I'm hoping to give you escapism. I hope that you spend all day hitting that button and finishing. This is one. Usually there are 8 episodes. This one's only 5. And I hope that's what happens.
And how has been this collaboration more broadly with Netflix? I mean, what an incredible opportunity to sort of know you're not sort of, maybe normally when it's one by one and you're not sure who you're going to develop it with, and getting that team together. Whereas I guess maybe you get into a little bit, there's a bit of a shorthand there. It must be incredible to be able to work with them on these projects.
They're great. Netflix has been a wonderful partner all over the world. They have different teams in each country that I work with, but the Netflix UK team especially has been wonderful. They really get us. They kind of leave us alone, let us do our thing. And I've been working with Nicholas Schindler and Richard Fee and Danny Brocklehurst on all of them. And this time we have Victoria Sari Archer, who wrote these episodes. We found her. We've discovered her talent, I guess, when we were doing Stay Close, and we're always looking to develop somebody new who hasn't had their own show and can really show what she can do. And I think Victoria did a really wonderful job here. I'm very proud of her.
I guess also the fact that it is Netflix and it does have an audience all over the world. I mean, I think Fool Me Once was the #1 most watched TV show the first half of 2024. So what does it mean to you to reach that many people? I mean, that is really the ultimate big audience.
It's just cool. I mean, the first thing we do is when we get all together is we have a table read, which is exactly what it sounds like. Everyone sits around a table and the actors sort of read it out. And I always kind of remind them there that one day Netflix is going to press a button and it's going to show up in 190 countries, over 225, 230 million subscribers around the world are going to get all 5 episodes. This isn't just going to be seen in your home country or whatever else. So we really got up our game. We have to make sure that we have appeal that can really travel as well. You have to be very specific to be universal and appeal, but we got to bring our A game, as we say. And so everyone always gets very excited and sort of fired up about that. The numbers are ridiculous of how many people are going to watch it. And, you can pretend it doesn't matter, but it does. We enjoy that. It's part of the fun for us.
And in that sense, do you feel like, and there's always this ongoing debate of the cinema and film versus kind of the streaming platforms. But I mean, just the fact that this can cut across so many different cultures in a way that a movie might not be able to travel, or, you only get certain releases, or whether it's dubbed or, with subtitles, feels more complicated. Whereas with TV and with the streaming platforms, it just seems to be able to travel so much more easily.
Well, I think I saw that Fool Me Once came out. It was in the top 10 in 91 countries the first week it came out. 91. I mean, it's a lot of countries. So, that's the Netflix actually has also, when you think about it for a moment, Netflix has given the world more access to foreign shows, whatever country you're in. If you're in Korea and it's a British show, and if you're in Spain, you can get a show from France, whatever it is, more than anybody else probably in the history of mankind, which strange thing to think about. But how many people outside of England get to see British shows now? 5, 10, 20 years ago would be impossible. It would just not have happened. And so Netflix, and vice versa, right? I mean, the biggest show that's going to be coming out and came out, Squid Games from Korea. How many Korean shows have British people or American people watched? That's a really kind of a cool thing that Netflix is able to do. We've all watched some foreign show that maybe we would not have watched. And I think it's opening up all of us to the fact that the world has really cool shows all over the place. And you don't have to stick with the same ones from your own country.
Providing that platform, whether it's culture, British culture being able to travel, but also representation. I was thinking in the show, I don't know how intentional that was, but, the lead being a woman of color and, a lot of the characters. And I feel like sometimes in cinema, we can still be a bit slow on progress and things like that. So is that something that's also intentional on your part and Netflix's part, or is that just something that's part and parcel of the progress that is being made in this sphere?
Both. In my case, or at least in our case, I think it's both. We do want to be more diverse, but the most important thing for us is entertaining the audience and making sure the audience is really enjoying the shows, but they really come together. If you start thinking it the other way, like, oh, I need to add this because versus just it's going to be an organic process, which it has been, I think, in a lot of our shows, that's when I think it really works and comes out. And so, both, the answer is sort of both. Yes, you want to be more diverse, but it has to be, we also want it in a really organic, interesting way.
And what's next for you? I mean, what's the next book that's kind of getting the Netflix treatment? Are you still writing alongside doing all this kind of work?
I still do my book a year. My next novel comes out. It's called Nobody's Fool. And it's actually sort of a sequel to Fool Me Once. It's a year later. And if people who had seen this show may remembered Sammy Kearse, played by Adil Akhtar. And at the end of that show, he would be, without giving any spoilers, he would not still be working for the police force. So a year later in his life, what's going on? And we follow a new case that involves something happened to him as a teenager. So that's what the next book is. We're next TV show. Well, there'll be a few. Besides, after Missing You comes out, I have a Polish one called Just One Look, an Argentinian one based off the book Caught, and the next British one we're going to make is called Runaway. We got a few going on, and hopefully we'll be making more with this team for a number of years.
If you were ever going to try and sort of boil down what makes one of your books, I mean, maybe there are some common threads, the twists, the turns, the mystery, the suspense. But how would you kind of pin down what those ingredients might be?
I think the books are very different from the TV shows. There's a lot of people who only like the books or only like the TV shows. They're actually quite different, not so much in the plotting, but the feel and things like that. I'm really trying to write a fast-moving, twisty thriller with heart. That's what I'm trying to do. It's one thing to stir your pulse. It's one thing to stir your mind, but I'm not also stirring your heart. If you didn't care what happened to Michelle Keegan in Fool Me Once, if you don't care what happens to Rosalind in Missing You, then I can have all the twists and turns in the world, but it's like having a beautiful car, but with no petrol. It's not going anyplace. And so I think the thing is you try to get that emotion into the story.
Are there any other authors out there that you see coming up behind you that you really like their work? How do you see the landscape out there?
Oh my goodness, tons. I mean, there's there's so many. We're actually living sort of in the golden age, I think, of crime writing. What I'm using as the all-purpose term for thrillers. Again, similar to what we just talked about TV with Netflix, from all over the place. From Scandinavia and France and Spain and all over. I'm hoping more keep getting translated and being brought up. But there's a really great group that's coming up and with really interesting backgrounds. Really cool plots, really wonderful writers. I actually think, like I said, I was lucky to come up in an age where people were doing really good work. And I think it's continuing.
Any advice for anyone else out there who wants to follow in your footsteps?
Just write. I mean, I do have. If you there's a BBC Maestro has master classes that I've done one. Lee Child did one. Ken Follett did one. Jojo Moyes did one. So there's ones that are out there. You could actually go on that. And I'm not plugging this, by the way, but each one of us did a class. I actually think a lot of them are pretty helpful. So that might be a place to start. But really, the key is to just write and turn off the voice in your head that says I suck. Because I got it too. I still have it. After all this time, after all these books, I still have it. I know Stephen King still has it. That fuels us. Instead of paralyzing you, let your fears about writing, let your self-loathing, if you will, at times, fuel you to keep writing rather than to slow you down.
Wow, brilliant advice. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. And I can't wait to watch the rest of Missing You, and I can't wait for everyone else to get a chance to see it too.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I'm so glad you're one of the first people I've talked to that have actually seen the first episode. So I'm excited to
very
hear
honored
that it worked for you. Because you never know. You put this thing out in the world, you just don't know how people are going to react.
No, absolutely hooked. So I can't wait to watch the rest. Well, thank you so much for your time. Lovely to chat to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Good talking to you.